Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and what I wanted to talk to you about today is an exciting one, talking about the Polaris. And we actually just got our first tease, surprisingly, before we even got to Sunday's big CitizenCon reveal. So with this ship, the Polaris is the new Corvette. We all knew that was going to be the case. But what we get is actually the first look at the ship and more details on what it actually is going to be. Now, when we just talk about the look, it almost looks like a miniature Star Destroyer. It's kind of got that classic Dorito type shape, you know, the Delta ship. And it actually looks really cool. It's not just a simple triangle. It's got some extra little design elements to it. It looks like a big ship, which is pretty exciting overall. But the real purpose of the ship is, they go on to say, it's a military mobilization initiative that they're trying to fulfill, which likely means quick response, probably quick traveling to respond to threats that pop up around a system, because ideally it's going to be a naval patrol, which means it's going to be lighter than most military cap ships, or it's going to be a militia flagship for basically the biggest ship a militia type of organization that's not necessarily the military could afford. It's not going to be, you know, an Idris or a Javelin or something along those lines. Now, it's known to be a nimble Corvette-class ship, and based on some of the concept art they're releasing, it does look to be something that can kind of zoom in and out of dangerous situations, deliver its payload, and move on. And when I say delivering its payload, that's because we're really focusing more on turrets and torpedoes versus primary weaponry. And if you remember when I talked about the speculation, there was a couple different ways that it could go. It could be kind of a fast attack craft, or it could be area denial. It ended up kind of being in between the two. It's fast attack in the fact that it's actually going to be fast and nimble, but it's not necessarily area denial, even though it kind of is, because it has a lot of turrets on it. But it's also going to be fast attack because it's bringing a boatload of torpedoes. Now, we get a little bit more to talk about here, finding out that it can refuel, rearm, and repair a fighter, or a light bomber, or a light support ship. Now, that's interesting, because a light fighter isn't necessarily surprising there. We could say a Hornet is to be expected on a military-class ship. We could also then say light bomber makes sense because a Gladiator really isn't that much bigger than a Hornet. Support ship is what piqued my interest, and somebody on the Discord channel actually mentioned that could just mean Argo, but honestly, I think we all kind of expect a cab ship is capable of carrying an Argo, so I look a little bit more into that. And I say that maybe that actually means that we get the ability to carry something that's like Cutlass sized. And when we actually look at the concept art, the hangar doors that are on top of the ship appear to be really, really big. You know, the ship's 155 meters long, so if we're taking that into consideration, we're probably looking at hangar doors between 40 and 60 meters long. So if that's the case, then a Cutlass or a Vanguard should theoretically fit in there, because we've known that CIG has officially said that they're not going to put arbitrary restrictions on what can actually end up fitting in a hangar on a ship. It's all about the size. So if that's the case, being able to haul along a Vanguard or a Cutlass, maybe even potentially, depending on the height there, like a Redeemer, that becomes a really interesting potential, especially when we start talking about the fact that there's a 24 max crew on this ship. So if we're saying that there's technically 7 stations on this ship, that probably means that you got 4 turrets, a pilot, a scanner, and a shield or engineer type of person. That leaves a lot of open spots. You know, we're talking about 17 extra spots that are left over there. So some of those could be Marines, some of those could be just random engineers, people running around trying to do repairs. But what I'm getting at is, if you actually have the ability to put a Redeemer in there, you could use this cap ship to bring people to where you need to go, then deploy a Redeemer to go actually drop them into the combat zones. That's exciting. But if height is a problem for the Redeemer, we could even say that if you could fit a Cutlass or a Vanguard in there, well, now all of a sudden we have the Vanguard Hoplite, and you could use that as your dropship. What I'm getting at is, there's some hints here, and maybe it's me reading into it, but I think there's some hints that this could be a pretty decent troop transport for fast deployment over extreme distances, as opposed to something like a Redeemer to help you kind of complete some of those targets. And I think that's really cool. Worst case scenario, you throw people in the Argo and drop them down there, the personnel Argo, but that's not necessarily what we're going for. Now, as far as armament goes, this thing actually has 28 torpedoes on board, and we're talking like Retaliator-sized torpedoes, big torpedoes. And what that means is you're actually going to have 7 volleys of 4 torpedoes. So it's going to basically be shooting out 4 at a time. It's got 7 turrets on board. Now, 4 of those are manned turrets, meaning that you're going to have a NPC or a player actually targeting and shooting. It's got 2 automated gun turrets, which is really interesting. That sounds like a point defense system, but since it doesn't necessarily say point defense, that sounds like an automated attack turret, which is pretty cool. And then there's actually one automated missile pod. Now, part of me gets really excited about automated missile pod because they say it's going to be targeting probably fighters and bombers that are coming in to attack you, or you could probably give it commands on what you want it to do. The other part of me says missiles are going to be expensive, so if it's just willy-nilly shooting them off, that's kind of concerning. Now, the turrets actually appear to be size 4s. When you actually zoom in on them, they almost look like the combined ballistic cannons. Now, that could mean a couple things. It could actually mean, yes, you actually get 2 by size 4s on all the turrets, which means that you could deal a lot of damage with those turrets as you're engaging other targets, meaning that you don't... I said that I don't like the fact that ships don't have forward-facing weaponry that the pilot controls. If you have size 4 turrets, or size 4 weapons on the turrets, I'm less concerned about that because every hit is a bigger deal, and this ship is really designed to take on bigger targets. Now, it could also be the fact that that's just a placeholder, and they don't really know what's going to go on those yet. It could also change into something that's totally a new type of weapon. We don't really know. That's a problem. Now, as far as the stations are concerned, I think what we're probably going to see, meaning that this, we said there's 4 turrets, there's a pilot, a scanner, a shield engineer, those types of things. I think what this probably means is you could technically fly the ship with 3 players. A pilot, like a scanner, and a shield type person. You could probably take it at a dock solo, actually, but you're not going to be maximizing anything. But having some of those automated turrets on board means that you could be fairly proficient by yourself. Not super effective, but fairly proficient, providing some extra versatility to this ship. Another thing that I saw that was actually kind of interesting about the Polaris was the fact that it's got light armor, which when you think capital ship and big ship, you don't necessarily say to yourself, I'm expecting this ship to have light armor. But what it does get in exchange is 3 large shields, one in the front, one in the middle, and one in the rear. And to me, what that says is that it actually means that you're supposed to be taking advantage of the fact that this ship is fast and nimble and has a lot of turret coverage to allow you to deal with threats before they melt your shields. Because if you end up letting your shields melt, then all of a sudden you don't have a whole lot of armor to take the punishment afterwards. I also think, and like I mentioned in my speculation video, light armor, heavy shields is a really good combination because you keep up at least a medium level of durability while keeping your weight low. And when you keep your weight low, all of a sudden you are faster and more nimble. Now, in order to help you keep that durability up, it does have a capital class power plant, which means you're going to be able to power, 3 large shields plus 7 turrets plus big engines and everything that goes along with this ship. So the fact that it's got a capital class power plant but is a smaller ship means that you have more power to go around. And as an added bonus, you have the ability to carry an extra 216 STU of cargo. Now, that amount of cargo isn't going to blow you away. You're probably not going to want to take on the operating cost that it actually takes to run this ship in order to haul 216 STU of cargo. You're going to be better off taking something like a Constellation out. But it is a nice perk. Whether you want to just add that onto your... if you're doing an escort mission, you could technically take a little bit more cargo along and maximize your profits. Or if you end up having to raid like a pirate gang, and you want to help kind of bring some of those things back to help maximize your profits there, you could do that too. But I think what we're seeing here is a ship that has a lot more flexibility than we expected it to, has a lot more firepower if you're just talking about pure torpedoes, even though it has less forward-facing weaponry than I would have hoped for. I'm personally really excited about it. Now, I'm not going to do the should you buy video until we get a few more Q&As as well as we see the Sunday presentation, but since we got this information, I wanted to put it out in front of all of you guys so you could actually see it. So if you have questions about any of this, please let me know. I'll try and get you answers as soon as possible. Otherwise, please stay tuned. There's going to be a lot more information about this ship coming soon, and I think you're going to want to see it. So have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.